Hi, I'm Dr. Corinne Wickens, and this is our first of our three different tools related to anticipatory activities. And it's really powerful because knowledge ratings are both essentially the vocabulary tool as well as an anticipatory tool. But I put it in anticipatory activities rather than vocabulary because of its specific purpose, whereas the other vocabulary tools might have different purposes based on individual instructors' use. Knowledge ratings are really intended on being a pre-reading anticipatory activity. So they are designed to evaluate students' prior or background knowledge of a topic or concept. And it helps students actively look at or be aware of new vocabulary, encourage students to think metacognitively about their conceptual background knowledge for each word being introduced. So they are having to, it's like trying to think about thinking and being aware of what they know about these ideas. And it's a realistic gauge of students' expressive and receptive vocabulary knowledge. Now, to remind you, expressive is what you can produce, what you can say, what you can write. Receptive is what you've heard or what you can read. So we're going, it's like the easier of the two is receptive. We get this first, and expressive is what we can apply, what we can translate, what we can use. So a knowledge rating is essentially that, is a rating in kind of a different kind of rating scale. And typically we have, can have no clue, never seen it, have seen it, have heard it, and can define. And so, and then in this case, we have a knowledge rating of measurements over here on the right. And students, in this case, have no knowledge of any of these two, but argue they can define both scale and weight. And this case, on the other case, is, I like this one on the left because they make it think, metaphor of a sandwich. Okay, the bread is the most bare bones of a sandwich, but a good sandwich, it looks like a hamburger over here with lots of toppings and condiments, that's really fully embellished. So then we have bare bones to embellish, which is the can use to comply, etc. So we have these really powerful vocabulary words that would be tier 2, if you remember, detective, definite, specific, positive, modest. And so then we range from ability to how easy. And so then again, so students could just raise a number. But again, I like using these independently rather than group because it's an individual rating of students' background knowledge. And the teacher then uses this to get a sense of what students come with rather than trying to do comparative. So we have not a very good typeface here as far as in the image, but I've never heard of it over here on the far left. Heard of it, have some idea and know it well. But particularly reason I wanted this one is that you can see is we have more room. And that's because it's not just meant to be marking off, check, check, check. I think this one's biome and adaptation, etc. So then in this case, where I have some idea and I know it well, then students would be expected to define and write what they think they know. So then teachers can then assess the whether accurate or inaccurate conceptions and misconceptions the students have related to these concepts. Hi gang, I'm Dr. Corinne Wickens, and in this video I am going to be modeling the activation prior knowledge tool called knowledge rating. This example comes from the high school literature and for American literature. So, and I am pulling from the Unit 2 on American Romanticism. So knowledge ratings is pretty simple. So it is a nice tool that bridges vocabulary instruction with active pre-reading tools and active anticipatory activities, because you are asking students to rate their background knowledge related to specific vocabulary or constructs. So again, this one is from the unit on Romanticism, and I can't seem to do much about the glare, but generally there are 3 or 4 columns. So there's usually one that says, I've never heard of it, have no clue, nada. There's usually some kind of intermediate categories that I've heard of it. I kind of have an understanding of it. And then the third one is I know it well, I can explain it, etc. So, and a couple of different examples, then either simply just can check mark, or you can have students then elaborate. And particularly since this is an English example, having some additional elaboration is useful as well. So while I could have picked a lot of different terms in from this unit, I picked out a few, and there's 5 from the introductory elements to highlight the background related to this. So we have first off is Romanticism, Gothic, Manifest Destiny, Sectionalism, and Transcendentalism. So Manifest Destiny may sound like a more social studies concept, but it comes from part of the background related to the time period. So then next, I would have students just rate how much they know, which is what I'm going to do. And I've done this with high school students, I've done it with college students, and then but I also like to vary it based on what kind of information, graduate students, what kind of information am I looking for? So again, highly versatile. Okay, I pretended to be a teenager rather than try to use my own background knowledge to elaborate. So what I did is that I decided that I had no clue about Romanticism, Sectionalism, and Transcendentalism. Those are big constructs, and as a 15, 16-year-old, may not have any background knowledge. But I said that I've heard of Gothic, but what's also important, like when we talked about word webs and breaking down misconceptions, is then I created an explain column, teenagers who dress in all in black. Because my thinking about Gothic is I've heard of it, but isn't that relate to kids that might be emo or, wear dog collars and spikes and that kind of thing? Isn't that what Gothic is? And Manifest Destiny, maybe I've just covered that in social studies. So I have a really good understanding, and it deals with the idea that Americans had the right to land and privilege, and that's what created the westward expansion and the genocide of Native Americans, the annexation of Hawaii, Guam, Puerto Rico, etc. This example comes from a geometry text. And our terms come from that first unit. So we have undefined term, point, line, plane, collinear, coplanar, intersection, definition, defined term, and space. Now, one of the things, again, that I've mentioned before is in the mathematics is that the visuals are really important. So when I added the explain part, I said, so we have the no clue, have heard of it, and know it well, but show me what you know. So I indicated that I didn't have a clue about undefined term, definition, and defined space. I've heard of collinear and coplanar and space, but I don't have enough to be able to draw collinear and coplanar. But with space, I drew, isn't that the stuff inside? Because you're finding area, usually the area inside. And so then like point, I know is a singular spot, place, line, plane. And so then drawing, I could have written out explanations, but I also, again, because mathematics is very visual, I wanted those examples. In this last example, I pulled from physical education and health. And specifically, I'm looking at muscle groups. And so, and I made sure to use some of the more complicated vocabulary. So then I might have calves for younger students, but that's a little more obvious. So, thinking at least middle school grades or upper elementary. So, but the vocabulary is kind of difficult, especially be difficult to spell. So I have biceps, triceps, trapezius, abdominals, latissimus dorsi, gastrocnemius, and quadriceps. Now, granted, I have heard of these, and I can't, I do know have some familiarity, but because of the vocabulary, I'm like, okay. And so, but I particularly wanted to pay attention to how, again, I modified this based on the discipline. So first off, no, still no clue. Still haven't heard of it. And so then you might want to think about if you were doing elementary and smiley faces, happy faces, neutral faces, emojis, things like that. Just stay away from the poop emoji. Uh, can locate on body. Again, so because this case we have muscular anatomy, so then being able to locate on the body would be important. And then I might be expected to do that. But I can also then identify corresponding exercises to work those particular muscle groups. So for instance, I know that where the biceps are, and then I can do bicep curls to work that, okay? And that again, similarly, I can locate the triceps and the backside. And then if I wanted, I would do tricep dips or tricep extensions to work back there. Now, if I didn't have, because again, some of these words are really hard and I might not have heard some of the more Latin terms for these. So trapezius, I said I have no clue. Abdominals, usually know them as abs. I do lots of sit-ups and crunches. So I can locate and I can identify an exercise. Gastrocnemius, I particularly know that it's calves, but may not know that. Latissimus dorsi, but I did say that I did know quadriceps, and I can locate it in the body, and that squats would be an important. So I want you to think about ways that you can modify these tools to make sense for what you're trying to teach. Always, always, always.